Hello friends, in the series which we are doing on understanding popular culture, today we will talk about theatre. And as all of us are aware that theatre holds a very important place in our lives, because when we did not have cinema, we had theatre in various forms. So the importance of theatre as a means of entertainment has been immense in the Indian society. At the same time, it has also been argued that theatre also communicates a lot of messages to the people as well. And that is how the contemporary aspect of theatre being communicative in terms of providing messages to the people has also been an important concern. But when we try to study theatre from the ancient times when the theatre started, we find that Sanskrit theatre was the earliest in the framework of India. And how theatre over a period of time has evolved, and how when you are talking about performance and how theatre as a performing art has been seen, we also try to relate it from the kind of literary writings which are there. So when plays etc. they were being written, and how these plays when they were being written, they were being performed by the people at different points of time. And in the modern context, when we try to understand theatre, we find that how NSD, National School of Drama, in the contemporary times is playing an important role in terms of theatre activities, and how even the repertory which is associated with the National School of Drama is also playing an important role in terms of dissemination of this art. But there are other forms as well, because it is a modern institution. But if we try to see theatre, then a lot of regional theatre in different parts of India with a lot of cultural significance and importance could be seen. When one is trying to talk about the kind of references, one can talk about Adya Rangacharya, the Indian theatre, Hemendranath Dasgupta, the Indian theatre, then M.L. Varada Pandey and Dr. Sunil Subedar edited the Critique of Indian Theatre. So these are some of the readings which one can refer to when one is talking about theatre in India, apart from Balwant Gargi's theatre in India, then T.K.V. Subramaniam's theatre culture in India, which is there in the SOL source material, which is the School of Open Learning. Then apart from that, we have Farley, P. Richmond, Darius L. Swan and Philip B. Zarelli edited Indian Theatre Traditions of Performance. So these are some of the readings which one can refer when one is trying to understand the importance of theatre and how theatre evolved in the context of the Indian situation. We also see that how some of the important contributors in that sense in the context of the literary writings in India, one of them Rabindranath Tagore, he said that a nation's culture is judged by the standard of its theatre. And great Russian actor and producer Stanislavski described stage as an index of aesthetic taste of a nation. So we find that how the culture of a place is connected to theatre, as well as how the aesthetic taste of a nation, they are also being reflected in the theatre. So this communicates a lot of cultural connection, and how theatre as a form which has been there since a very long period of time, and that particular form, how it is able to inspire the next generations as well, the kind of changes which they bring about in the art of theatre. And Bernard Shaw, he commented that a national theatre is worth having for sake of nation's soul. And the literature of each language also has a number of plays which have never been produced, and which even may not be worth producing, but which may have a potential and other literary qualities to sustain them. But they do not belong to theatre. But when these literary plays etc., they are performed on the stage in the form of theatre, and many of the people, those who may not read the literary writings, but they can see the play, and many may not be literate enough to read those plays, but watching the play and understanding it is a comparatively easier task in terms of reading. So we find that how when we talk about theatre, that the written play is something like a script which is there in the film, and how the framework as well as the substance of the play it communicates that also. So when there are other things beside the written play which can go to make the final performance, so we have a number of actors and actresses, there is a producer, scenic arrangements, and a number of lighting effects, costumes and makeup, all of them, they are also very, very important. And then we find in the context of the Indian theatre a lot of musical traditions. For example, some of the theatres or the folk theatres, they have a lot of music, Nautanki, Swang, Ramlila, etc., the kind of music which is there in them. And we find that the art of theatre is a composite art, and how various technicians and artists, all of them, they collaborate with each other, and because of their efforts we find that they are able to deliver one product in a form of a play. Then we also find that how it has been talked about even by Rabindranath Tagore, that how culture is related to it. And when we try to assess the uniqueness of the Indian theatre, then we find that it has a strong traditions of rasas and bhavas. So ras and bhav, both of them, they are integral to the Indian theatre, and how India has continually been a heaven for the devotees of art, be it music, dance, painting or drama. So we find that even in the earlier traditions in the context of the arts in India, they were full of dance and the music, and we have music and dance in every sphere, even all the festivals, even the personal evolution of an individual, where various sacraments and rituals, they are being conducted, whether in the framework of the Upanayan or maybe marriage, even death, where we find that how dance and music, they are integral. And many a times when people they die and they've lived a full life, then they are taken to the funeral pyre along with a lot of music. So we find that the kind of understanding which is there in the performing arts, and how they are also connected to the music and dance as well. And all these elements, they are also visible in theatre as well, where you will find the dance, music, dialogues, and all of them, when they combine, they provide this kind of a form. And how it has evolved over a period of time, and the various kinds of styles and the audiences which has stimulated the experimentations of their narrators as well. So in that context, that how theatre is not only entertaining the audience, but it is also trying to provide a lot of information or messages to the audience as well. And we, as I told you earlier as well, that the origins of theatre in India, they were in Sanskrit, and many Sanskrit playwrights, they contributed to the excellence, vivacity and dynamism in this field. And we find that how later folk theatre also gained a lot of prominence, and the regional variety of the theatre with its unique features, it contributed to the diversity of the theatre forms in India. And when we talk about the Sanskrit theatre or drama, then Farley Richmond argues that the Mahabhashya by Patanjali has the first reference regarding the beginning of the Sanskrit drama. So from the ancient times, when we try to understand the ancient Indian history, we find that ancient Indian history has contributed a number of plays, and these plays, they have been integral to the Indian cultural traditions. And in that context, Natya Shastra, a compilation of approximately, which is ranging from 200 BC to 200 AD, and it is credited to Bharat Muni, is one of the important texts which has been in a way connected to the theatre or drama. And this text in a way reports about the various components of a theatre, including music, dance and architectural styles, costumes, props, and how acting and music, both of them, they are also in a way central to drama or theatre. And we also find that how they provide, in a sense, a mythological description of the origin of theatre. So in that sense, when we try to understand the theatre, when we try to understand the kind of components which are relevant to the theatre scene in India, that how, as I told you, that ras and bhav, both of them, they are important to the Indian theatrical traditions, and how when you talk about Natya Shastra, Bharat Muni, he enunciated 8 rasas in Natya Shastra. Shringar, which is love; Hasya, which is laughter; Rodram, which is fury; Karunayam, which is compassion; Vivitsam, which is disgust; then Bhayanakam, which is horror; Veeram, which is the heroic mood; and Adbhutam, which is the wonder. So all these kinds of rasas, they have been in a way talked about in Natya Shastra, and later some other rasas like Santam, which is the peace, was added, and we find that how with the addition of Santam, peace, this idea of Navrasas, it developed during this time. Then later we also find that apart from that, 2 more appeared later, where Vatsalya, or the parental love, and Bhakti, which is the spiritual devotion. Both of them, they were added to these kinds of rasas. And how the kind of rasas which are there in the Indian theatrical traditions, and how they in a way try to communicate the kinds of rasas which are there in a particular kind of a theme on which the play is based. And many a times that various kinds of rasas or ras could be found in one single play. But largely the major theme of a play may be largely related to only one ras. So all these kinds of things which one can see in the various Indian theatres from the ancient times. And if we see in the context of bhava, then it has been explained as feelings or emotions. And when we see it in the framework of the performance, then emotions, they are also denoted in the performance as well. And the scholars like Pramod Kale, he has argued that bhava allows performer to recreate images which are contained in a dramatic text so as to bring about the proper effect. And ras is the framework of the rules and regulations to explain and achieve an effective communication, a rapport between the performer and the spectators. So how we find that a number of images which are being recreated, which are there in the dramatic text, and how both these bhav and ras, they are central to the issue of performance. One is containing the rules which are there, and the other is trying to in a way imbibe them in a performance. And when we tend to see the kind of contribution which has been made by the people, those who have been central to the Indian theatrical traditions or Indian literary traditions, then we find that how Kalidas is considered to be an ancient India's greatest Sanskrit playwright, and his romantic plays like Malvika and Agnimitra, then Vikram and Urvashi, and Abhijanam Shakuntalam. So all these plays which were written by Kalidas, they have a lot of romantic quality, and they have been considered to be the classic of the literature in which Kalidas was writing. And we find that how this recognition of Shakuntala or Abhijanam Shakuntala was inspired by one of the stories which is there in Mahabharata. And scholars like James R. Brendan, they have argued that how Shakuntala in the English translation, it influenced the Goethe Faust as well. So we find that these kinds of traditions which were there in the Sanskrit theatre stage or drama area or field, a number of other playwrights, they also took some kind of inspiration from them. And later we find that other Indian dramatists like Bhavbhuti, who wrote again 3 plays, Malati Madhav, Mahavir Charita and Uttar Ramacharita. And out of these 3, last 2, they contain the whole epic of Ramayana. And then again Emperor Harsha in the 7th century AD wrote 3 plays, comedy Ratnavali, Priyadarshika, and Buddhist drama Nagananda. So how not only the people, those who were the playwrights, they were associated in terms of writing those plays, but even the kings, those who had this kind of a bent of mind, they were also contributing to this field in terms of writing about these plays, or rather writing the plays themselves. And we also find, when we talk about the Sanskrit theatre, then we find that in the Sanskrit theatre, characters, they used to speak in 2 languages. Upper strata of the society, they were speaking in the dialogues in Sanskrit, while the lower strata they were speaking in the Prakrit language. So this in a way was also indicative of the kind of distinctions which are there in the society, and it was also trying to communicate that how two sections of the society, the lower as well as the upper, both of them they were speaking the different languages. And we also see that over a period of time how Natya Shastra was able to in a way influence the various artists over a period of time, and a number of distinct castes they also emerged, some of them like even charans, and which are popular in Rajasthan. And these charans, they could be taken to be the descendants of Sutas, who were the bards of the epic days, and how these people they were trying to communicate the old stories or the traditional stories, and how kings they were providing all sorts of patronage to these people, because they were in a way trying to communicate the Vanshavalis also of these kings. And they are also connected to the issue of oral traditions as well, that how oral traditions developed during this time because of the contribution of charans and bhats even in Rajasthan as well. And similar are the other traditions in other places as well. So we find that these people they were trying to in a way traditional heroic poems, but they would also sing the glories of their patrons and their ancestors, those who were providing all these kinds of patronage. And because of the kind of patronage which was given to the Indian theatre by the people, those who had money, many times the kings or the nobles, for example the Lakshman Sena of Bengal and the king of Jodhpur, they can be cited as examples, those who provided a lot of patronage during this time. And we find that how even the saints or bhakts, they sang their songs, they conveyed a lot of knowledge and the experience to the people directly and naturally, and how the bhakt could only sing but also dance in gay ecstasy. So both the tasks of dancing and the singing was performed by the saints, and we find that when their popularity increased, then it led to some sort of a community singing, where people coming to one place and in a community they were singing together or dancing together about the kinds of the various gods in which they believed. And mostly these saints they were trying to convey the life as well as the deeds of the gods. And one of the epics, Bhagavat, dealing with the life story of Krishna, it provides most of the inspiration in them. And we find that between the saint, that means the individual, and the god, there was no longer any intermediary. Intermediary was not in a way needed, and which in fact also turned a song into a dialogue as well. So this epic Bhagavat deals with this kind of an issue. And then thereafter, if we talk about other examples, then Jayadev's Geet Govind, we come across a dialogue between Radha, and Radha is to be seen as an individual self and Krishna as the universal God. So in this context, how the religious themes they were also very important, and we also see that how folk theatre over a period of time has also provided a lot of not only entertainment but at the same time some kind of an information or communication to the masses, and how many times we find that the messages which are being given in the folk theatre, they have been received very well by the audience, because they are well conversant with the language in which these folk theatres they are being performed. Then they also understand the kind of culture in which they are rooted. So this understanding of the language as well as understanding of the cultural form and the symbols provides an opportunity to the spectators or the audience to able to relate in a far better manner with these folk theatre. And we also find that in India definitely there is a lot of diversity in terms of expression, because there are so many languages and so many cultures which are there in India, and because of this diversity, various kinds of forms in different regions of India, they have evolved over a period of time. For example, the tradition of Jatra in Bengal, and it is a form of itinerant theatre that borrowed tales from the epics, mythology and the folk stories. And the objective was to present a reformist social or religious kind of a theme, and the message was also very popular in Bengal in 18th-19th century, and how even jatras, they were quite popular during the times of the national movement as well. And we find the messages of the national movement, they were communicated through jatras as well. So how the folk theatre was also not only connected in terms of providing entertainment, but at the times of crisis when India was under the colonial rule, then also it was contributing to the ideas of the national movement. Then we also see that apart from this, a number of other popular theatre forms, they also have spread in different parts of India. For example, Nautanki in Uttar Pradesh, Tamasha in Maharashtra, Leela in Orissa, Swang in Punjab, Yakshigan in Karnataka, Bhavai in Gujarat, Kathakali in Kerala, etc. They are all of them in which we find that itinerant troops, they moved from place to place to present their shows. And we find that not only are the themes which have been given on the slides are the only theatre forms in India, but apart from them there are so many other theatre forms in India, and we find that how all these theatre forms, they have contributed to the diversity in India. And we find that when you talk about the folk theatre forms, how they are providing not only entertainment, but there is some kind of an earthy quality to these kinds of presentations, and how audience is also able to connect with the local audience as it is in the local language. And the kind of symbolisms which are being used, they are also culture specific. So it is very easy to connect from the point of view of the people, those who are watching these theatrical traditions, and how they also create some kind of a more impact because they are available at a lower budget, and they are as well as flexible as well. And this also provides some kind of a credibility and familiarity to the audience. So we will talk about the theatre and the various forms of theatre, the importance of theatre further in our next lecture. Thank you very much.